Hey guys, so I know, yet another tier list video, but don't worry, I have several new data videos that I've thought of that I'll be bringing in the next month or so. Anyways, I did this side deck staple tier list by the data once before and thought I'd try it again. The formula for the tier score calculation is the same as before, and the only real difference with this formula compared to the meta deck tier list is that we are reducing the impact of the match win percentage, because this only represents the match win percentage if that card was ever played in the match, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that card was the sole contributor to the win percentage. The formula will also take into account how often the card was in the topping deck list from the South and Central American TCG Championships. Now keep in mind that I was not able to incorporate the top cut representation from the NA Championships since that event was still ongoing at the time of recording this video. So as usual, you can check my old tier list videos that I'll link below so that you can know more about the formula. So let's get right into the tier list. At first, as always, is Ash Blossom, which not only is played a lot online, but is pretty much in everyone's deck list among the topping list from the South and Central American TCG Championships. General hand trap that can stop most cards and really mandatory in this format because of branded fusion. At number 2 is Call by the Grave, which is predominantly a main deck card, but you will see that a very small number of players will side this as well. There's a call for this card to get banned, while some feel it should just come back to 3. No longer is it only used for stopping hand traps, it just stops a ton of impactful cards whether going first or second. At number 3 is Nibiru, which has been climbing up in play and maintaining a lot of play in people's topping list. Pretty interesting since we are not in a super heavy combo format and there are top decks like Thunder where this card does nothing, but it's still such a strong card, especially when there are still players that are not respecting Nib in game 1 especially. But once Spike comes out, perhaps this card will see a big decline in play as they won't be able to resolve it as much. Next is Dimensional Barrier, which surprisingly actually did not see a lot of play on Dueling Book, but it saw a ton of play in people's topping list from the TCG Championships that made it this high with the formula. Such a strong card that can stop key plays for top decks like Branded and Sword Soul, and can really only be stopped by Red Reboot. There was recently a new trap card announced for the OCG that seems to be a watered down version of D-Barrier, so perhaps that's a sign that this card might get hit on the upcoming ban list. Another surprise entry to the tier A category is Droll, which at least a couple of months ago was not seeing that much play, but is now actually seeing quite a lot of play in people's side decks among the topping lists. Branded does add quite a lot, and Droll has always been good against most rogue decks, and not to mention tier 2 decks like Drytron got buffs with Ben 10 coming back to 2, so you have to respect that as well. Next on tier B, we are starting off with Infinite Impermanence. Imperm is usually a really popular card, and as you can tell by the tier score, it was only a decimal off from Droll, so it really is in that tier A potential. Admittedly, it's not super high impact on its own, but at least it is versatile and is good for going first or second. Next is the first back removal on this tier list, Harpy's Feather Duster. Such a blowout card, and it was a bit surprising that in the past half year or so, this card actually was not seeing much play as you would expect, but now it's back to seeing a lot of play, including in the main deck. After that is the most popular quick play back removal in the last few months in Twin Twisters, which saw a lot of play in the topping list at the TCG Championships as well. Discarding for cost is usually not ideal for most decks, but being able to snipe multiple cards, especially in a format where we're facing multiple back row, is pretty nice. Then we have another quick play spell in Forbidden Droplets, which I think is fair that it is ranked higher than Dark Ruler in the current format. While Scythe Lock is not as common in this format, Droplet is seeing play in most lists because it is pretty much always going to be live against most strategies, unless you are under Shifter of course. Next we have Veiler, which is a solid hand trap, but I think it's fair that it's not rated as high as Imperm, since Imperm is a bit more versatile but of course has its own cons as well. Again, pretty live against most decks, but like Imperm, suffers from the fact that it targets, so can be prone to missing its target if the opponent can get rid of it with some form of quick play card. After that is another hand trap in DD Crow, which is impressive that it made up to the tier B status. Actually saw a good amount of play in the topping list as well, and Crow can be quite deadly against Eldritch strategies since banishing all their Golden Lords will really force them into submission. Great against banishing the target for Branded in red as well, and this card is not once per turn, which is great. Another very popular side deck strategy in the last few formats has been Evenly Match, which ranks higher than other board wipe cards such as Lightning Storm, saw a good amount of play in the topping list, and while I am hesitant on referencing the match win percentage, the 62% in the last 7 days online when this card was played in a match was the highest among all cards listed in this video. Being able to banish face down is incredible and can shut down many plays, although with your opponent being able to keep a card usually, you still need to play through that. Lastly on tier B is Anti-Spell Fragrance, which surprisingly did not see a lot of play on Dueling Book in the last 7 days, but made it this high on the tier list because it was played a lot among the topping lists at the TCG Championships. Really surprising that the match win percentage was only 39% when this card was played. You would think that it's really hard to beat someone when they flip Anti-Spell. Either way, these numbers from YGO Scope don't tell the whole story, and we all know how powerful this card is in general, but especially in this current format where we are very spell heavy, particularly fusion strategies. Starting off tier C is another monster negation card in Dark Ruler, which is a really strong card, and depending on your deck strategy, this may be the better choice in comparison to Forbidden Droplets. Especially in the next format when Splight is released, I think Dark Ruler will see more play because of the monster heavy boards we're going to see in the next format. Next is a Toxic card in Mystic Mine, which does see a good amount of play in the topping list and can be an auto win in mini games, especially game 1. Hopefully a card that Konami will finally ban, just like the OCG, but until then, a lot of strategies will be maining and or siding this card to sneak out a win and punish combo boards. Speaking of Toxic is Artifact Scythe, which admittedly I don't think is seeing as much play as before since Anaconda got banned and there's not a lot of DP in the format anymore. Still, there are other strategies that can help resolve Scythe's lock effect, and it's just not fun. You can see that about a quarter of the topping list were using this card, and I believe it's quite popular in the Punk Synchro variants, which at the moment is one of the tier 1 decks. Then we have another board wipe card in Lightning Storm, which does not see as much play as Evenly, but the card is very versatile on its own. If you're an OTK kind of strategy, then you probably prefer this card over Evenly matched, but overall, Evenly does seem to have better and cover more strategies. Next we have another quick play removal in Cosmic Cyclone, which is rightfully ranked below Twin Twisters at the moment because while paying life points is an easier cost than discarding a card, only being able to snipe one is not as useful right now when we have to guess which set card is Dreaming Town or when you want to snipe more than just that anti-spell. Still a great card, and being able to banish has its own utility, particularly against Eldritch cards. Then we have Gamma. While it is certainly ranked lower than the other hand traps, and I think rightfully so in this format, at least it still made it to this tier list, unlike some other hand traps like Ghost Spell, which was once very popular not that long ago. Gamma is strong, but having to carry the driver in the deck sucks, but when you resolve Gamma, honestly one of the best hand traps out there. After this we have Super Polymerization, which has certainly fallen off in the last couple of months where it was such a popular card when Branded Despia was seeing predominant play earlier in the format. Still a great card and is relevant in the current format, but has become more limited in terms of the decks that will bother playing this card. Next is another well-known staple in Triple Tactics Talent, which is live against many top strategies like Branded Despia, Sword Soul, and Flunder, which all typically activate monster effects in the main phase. Not ranked too high, but at least it made it onto the list, unlike Crossout, which is a card that often gets grouped with talents and call by. The last card in Tier C is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, which certainly has been falling in play in the last few months after it being so popular when the Brave token engine first came out. Now while the Brave token stuff is still going on with the new Punk stuff as well as Dragon Link and ABC, the card is not too popular since it's not great against Branded Despia or Sword Soul, and there's other hand traps out there. Starting at Tier D is actually Dimension Shifter, which essentially is purely driven by Flu Wanderees, as that is the only meta deck that can play this card. I honestly expected the match win percentage to be even higher when this card was played, since it seems like most strategies just cannot do many plays once this resolves. Next we have Solemn Judgment, which of course is an incredibly powerful card, but considering that it was not played too often in the topping list from the TCG Championships, didn't score too well on this list. Can be a really game ender post-side when your opponent tries to play through your board, although can unintentionally help you lose as well due to the high cost of your life points. Lastly on the list is Solemn Strike, which actually did not see any play among the topping lists that were available, but this card seems to be quite popular in online play on Dueling Book, so it does make the list. Still a really strong card and can shut down turns when used at the right time, and is generally a given card to play in any back row focused strategies. Alright guys, so that was it for the tier list of the side deck staples. Hope you found that useful. Curious to see how this will all change post Power of the Elements, where we'll have several new tier 1 strategies in Splight and tier elements. If you like this kind of video, then consider subscribing for more database content for Yu-Gi-Oh! As always, a big thanks to my patrons Eileen Dice Queen, Bolt Spider, Cybernetic, Brandon Jaren, Bearlord, Spooky Boogie, Gridora, and Stephen Phillips. You guys are truly incredible. Take care guys.